This is a deep movie, friends. Shit is deep, okay? Hello, and welcome back to Embodying Mystical Mac. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk about what we're going to be talking about today. But first, a little Mystical Mac update. Today started out as a very anxious day. And on days where I'm very anxious, I am not always up for creating content. But there's something to be said when something calls to you in a way that this video / podcast episode has been calling to me. And I just have to talk about this film because I am not proud to say it even went over my head the first time that I saw it. I wasn't prepared to see it, and so I didn't. I went to the movies and I left thinking, it was all right. And I do have one criticism that definitely still stands, but more on that later. But the point is that once I got a hold of myself and really listened and really opened myself to all of the possibilities that this movie could be, it blew my mind wide open. And so this is my take on Encanto. I am going to be giving a spoiler-free thoughts, followed by my going through my many notes that I took as I was watching it for the second and third times. And this may be a two-parter, not gonna lie, both podcast and YouTube video-wise, because there are a lot of notes. But let's start off with my spoiler-free review of Encanto. This is a deep movie, friends. Shit is deep, okay? I mean, I've got the little golden butterfly drawn on my face today for the video. And that's because this movie, it's like a butterfly. It literally takes you through transformations. I mean, not just because of that. The golden butterfly is a huge symbol in this movie, which we will totally get into. But truly, though, what a more appropriate symbol than a butterfly for a movie that takes you not only through these characters' transformations, but through the transformation of their family in turn. And if you allow yourself, you will be transformed by the end of this movie. Notice I said, if you allow yourself. Because I will plant my flag in the thesis statement. That is that Encanto's message is that change is a constant. And love can run along it forever and ever and ever if we're only brave enough to accept change when it comes and adapt to it in turn. And that is a profound message. So, not only you've got this profound message, you've got this huge cast of characters, right? 12 major characters at once in this one children's movie. Not only has it never been done before, as said by the creators themselves and the behind the scenes videos that I was watching, but not only is it a huge amount of characters at once, it's a family. It's a multi-generational household, which the representation in that is just so beautiful, because where I'm from in Brazil, that's not uncommon. It's not uncommon to have cousins and uncles and a grandmother, all under one roof. And I mean, representation is just a whole other thing that this movie has going for it. It's just so awesome to see Afro-Latin mixes be represented, to see just the Colombian culture, which has a lot of aspects that a lot of other Latin cultures, South American cultures share, right? The colors, the party, the atmosphere, the love. It's very, in that regard, it also shines. So you have this message, and you have this awesome cast of amazing, eccentric, in their own right, characters, and then you add the fact that this family is magical, right? And how can you not come away with something beautiful and heartwarming and transformative at the end? How can you not? Mirabel is a admirable and incredible protagonist. Incredible. I want to call her a woman, but I think she's probably like 15 or something like that. Admirable, incredible teenager. And she has agency, man. This girl has agency. She's like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And what does she do? She sets out to do it. In fact, I love how her I Want song, oh, that's a bit of a spoiler. I'm going to save that for when we're done with this part. Her I Want song is, in Disney fashion, very telling for the rest of the movie, which is awesome. And it just, she is a beautiful, beautiful character. And not only that, but she's so full of love and so full of light, that she loves nothing but to shine that light onto her family members. And that's so beautiful. Not only that, the music is absolutely breathtaking. Lin-Manuel Miranda, as well as the rest of the creators of the music, from the musicians who played all of the instrumental parts, to the phenomenal voice actors, to the whoever arranged the score and everything, which I feel that Lin had most of a hand in the music as a whole. Regardless, they all did a phenomenal job. The songs are catchy but profound. And it's really truly written like a musical, which to people who don't watch a lot of musicals or just aren't familiar, a musical is not just this movie where people break out into songs sometimes, or this play where people break out into songs sometimes. That's not what a musical is. It's not what musical numbers are supposed to be used for. Musicals exist because there's this theory, right, in performing, that when a character moves beyond, when their emotions boil up to a degree where they move beyond being able to just speak about it, and instead they sing about it, when that truly gets implemented and used well, coupled with the ability of songs to help move plot along as opposed to stagnate them or stagnate it, you have the reason a lot of us love musicals, or one of the reasons that a lot of us love musicals. I can only truly speak for myself. However, I would imagine that a lot of musical theater lovers feel the same, that it's just such a brilliant and creative way to tell story that allows for not only just progression of plot, which we want ideally at every point of the movie, and this is one of the things I was not ready for Encanto to just be like, every moment is a plot moving moment. Every moment moves us forward in a substantial way. There is not a moment in this movie where something is not happening that is leading to the ultimate climax and resolution. And so to be able to move the plot along in this way, in the creativity bubble that is a song, and then because it's in song, not in just speaking and the like, you get excuse me. I need my water. I got so excited. There we go. You get this ability to look into a character's heart, to look into a character's mind in a way that you wouldn't be able to if they were just talking. Especially not if they were talking to the people that they're trying to keep these feelings from. Right? So the fact that it was written very much like a great musical, which it should be because it is one, but that really also makes it very special because it I feel that in a lot of movies that are made for children, I'm not saying all of them, and I'm not saying that this is like an overwhelming majority, because in every kids musical I feel that there are at least like one or two songs that definitely move the plot along. But it's not often that you'll find a movie where every single song moves the plot along, though it's not surprising considering that every single scene, every single thing that happens moves our plot along. So that's something that's really pleasant to watch, even if you don't know that, that you're looking for that, or that's a desirable thing. If you really pay attention to it, it makes for a really, really pleasant viewing experience. And it's just freaking heartfelt. Man, it's such a heartfelt, beautiful message, really well executed, and I 10 out of 10 recommend. And my deepest hope is that this film allows more people to look within themselves and be more accepting of themselves and of their family members to hopefully find their way to tomorrow. Now, spoilers ahead. You've been warned. Let's just go through my notes. You know how I feel about this film. It's very smartly done. It's well put together. It's well thought out. There is a great attention to detail, down to the clothing that the characters wear representing their magical abilities and what they do. To the golden butterfly being so well cemented into the film, even from the start when you're not really looking for it, to the nuances and the way that everything in the script seems to get paid off, meaning if they introduce something, it's always for a reason. There's nothing, absolutely nothing, that you come to a point where you're like, okay, I don't understand why we had to see that, or I don't understand why we introduced that. So let's go into my notes, into just the little things that I wrote as I was going about the movie, right, for the second and third times. So if there are any of you here left that haven't seen the movie, and don't really care too much about the spoilers, I will give you a little itty bitty summary, as itty bitty as I can get. Basically, Abuela Alma, which is our protagonist's grandmother, and her husband and their whole village and their newborn triplets had to leave their village due to a war that happened in Colombia. And on their way across a river to safety, they were ambushed, and Pedro saved his village, or rather Pedro sacrificed himself for his wife and their kids and his village. and put himself in between the village people, her and the kids, and the armed men whom ambushed them. And in that moment, my belief is that Pedro's love and sacrifice and Abuela's impact by that love and sacrifice created what Abuela grew to call the miracle, which is this magic that allowed this candle that was lighting their way to safety to become an ever-glowing candle that does not burn out. And all of a sudden, these butterfly markings were engraved around the candle, and from the candle, magic grew and built this beautiful house that is magical in and of itself, that speaks to them, that has a relationship with this family. Of course, then it was just Abuela and her triplets, and then of course, in protecting them from future outsiders, the magic built a mountain around this beautiful valley that they then named Encanto. And when Abuela Alma's children each were 5 years old, which obviously, I don't know why I said that all at the same time, they're triplets, they each got a magical gift. Julieta can heal people with her cooking. Pepa, her mood can control the weather. And Bruno, he sees the future. Bruno ends up being a bit of an outcast and ends up leaving the family. Turns out he didn't really leave, though. He's just retreated to the inside of the walls and inside of the magical house that is Casita. And it is a magical house. Like, the kids' rooms are all, like, insanely large. Because when you get your gift, you get your own room. Now, the catch is that our protagonist, Mirabel, she did not get a gift when she was 5. And the way that the movie portrays this is just very intelligent, as well as that opening song, as just the title Encanto is coming onto the screen. Literally, that song lives rent-free in my mind. And I can't even really sing it because I haven't heard it all that often. I've just heard it the 3-ish times that I've watched the movie. But the way that they do it is just so brilliant, because we open up in the nursery when Mirabel's 5, and it's right before her door ceremony, and Abuela is telling us the story that I just told you, that, you know, they had to flee their home, yada yada. And it's really interesting, I noted, that when Abuela is telling us this story in the beginning, it's very muted. It's a very muted version of this story, to the point where even in her recounting it, you know, during the whole thing, like, she's not crying. It seems to be very much like a wow moment, and wow only, right? Never mind the fact that her dear husband literally just died in front of her face, in order to save her and her people, or not her people rather, but the village that they lived with, that they lived in. It's weird to say in, because, you know, these are people, not a place anymore. The people that they lived with in the village, right? And their children. But the first time we see this memory in the very beginning of the movie, it doesn't reflect any of the pain. It's just the wonder about the magic and the encanto and the gratitude for the fact that this happened at all, and that they were saved and safe. And Abuela was allowed to grow this future that became this multi-generational family living under this beautiful home, this beautiful roof, in this beautiful home. And of course, Casita warns them that it's time for Mirabel to go to her ceremony. And when Mirabel comes to the door, we don't actually see what happens. It just cuts to that beautiful title sequence with that beautiful song. And then next thing we know, Mirabel is getting dressed when she's a teen, and Casita is helping her out, right? Like, the shelf is like tilting to give her glasses, and the floorboards like kick her shoes into place for her, and it's all very sweet. And she she begins the first song, which I thought it was really smart the way that they did this as well. The fact that the kids are the ones that she's telling this whole song of exposition to, letting us know who the family madrigal is, right? That whole song is just, all the songs are amazing, but that song is awesome. The part where she's like, so yeah, Tio Felix married Peppa and my dad married Julieta and that's how Abuela became an abuela. Like, that part lives rent-free in my head all the time. It gets stuck in my head all the time. I thought that was really genius, the way that we're being told this because these children are asking about it, right? And so that's really awesome. I love that right before this whole thing starts, Mirabel has this little string on her clothing that she takes off while she's looking in the mirror. She notices it's there. She takes it off her clothes and goes on about her day. That gets paid off later, which is awesome. Like I said, everything introduced down to the string on her clothes gets paid off. Like, it's amazing. Love the coffee's not for kids line in Familia Madrigal or Family Madrigal. That's really funny. That little kid who he is addicted to coffee, so he's always like, ugh. And then at the end of the movie he's like helping them rebuild the home by drinking coffee. So it's like mixed messages, Disney, but we forgive. Because, I mean, shit, I drank coffee as a kid. Like, I drank a lot of coffee as a kid. But in Brazil, it wasn't that frowned upon. I don't know. Excuse me. I think it's really interesting that in the Family Madrigal song, Abuela Alma has this line where she says, each new generation must, emphasis on the word must, keep the miracle burning. And of course, she's talking about this magic that they have, but she's also talking about this candle. To Abuela, the candle is the magic, which I think is really interesting. So, Mirabel, okay, these notes are super haphazard, so I'm going to try to make sense of them as I go. So, this thing about each new generation must keep the miracle burning, right? It's really interesting because throughout the whole movie, Abuela's very protective of the candle. It's about the candle. The miracle is the candle, which we find out later is not true at all, right? So I think it's really funny in a sort of like, was this like a thought out thing? Which it probably was. But I wrote, Mirabel accidentally burns Abuela's little surprise that she made, right? She made these like beautiful, I don't even know what you call them, just like these floor candle holders with these like beautiful cutout designs. And she's placing them right in front of the family photos where all the kids took pictures with their doors after they got their gifts, all except for Mirabel, of course. And Abuela scares her while she's standing up, and she accidentally knocks over the candle in Abuela's gift. And it's really interesting to me too, because it's like she lit the candles in order to show it to Abuela, but it's just like, it's basically like Mirabel going the extra mile. Like, she could have showed her without lighting the candles to prevent this kind of thing from happening, but she wanted to show her in its full glory. And it's like Mirabel going the extra mile, and Abuela's kind of like harshness sort of undercutting that, not really fully seeing that, right? So I thought that was really interesting. She didn't accidentally burn anybody else's, she burns Abuela's on accident. So throughout this movie, the beginning of it, I should say, it definitely seems like Abuela has very little empathy for most characters aside from Isabella and Antonio. her favorite grandchild and then her youngest grandchild. And that's just very interesting to me. Because Mirabel ends up having all the empathy to the point where when she's just been fighting with her sister, and it's very difficult for her to sort of be the bigger person and approach Isabella. The second that Isabella comes out with the confession of she doesn't want to marry Mariano, she's doing it for the family, it's like Mirabel's whole game changes. It's not about her gaining anything anymore. It's not about her getting her sister into this prophesized hug. It's literally just about how, whoa, that is a serious confession. Isabella, are you okay? And that's really interesting. That says a lot, right? And I found that Abuela and Mirabel actually have parallels. For example, one of the theories floating around out there is that Mirabel didn't get a gift because her actual gift is meant to be keeper of the magic, much like Abuela. Abuela doesn't have a gift, but her sort of self-assigned gift, right, was to be keeper of the magic, to protect this magic so that it can go on in her family. And Mirabel has all of the makings of a keeper of the magic, even early on when those gifts in her, no pun intended, aren't being recognized. And that empathy has a huge amount to do with that. So this is just a funny little note that I took when she's getting ready to go to Antonio's door ceremony with him, right? They're under the bed and they're acting like she could never go visit him in his room. Like they're acting like because he's moving out of the nursery. But the way that they are acting is like because they're not going to sleep in the same room anymore, right? Like they're acting like they're never going to be able to see each other again. I just thought that was really endearing. So let's see. I really appreciated the way that we got to see Mirabel's unfortunate and traumatic door ceremony through Antonio's ceremony. And I thought that it was really beautiful that Antonio is kind of like her champion. You know, Mirabel is her whole family's champion. I mean, that's another reason that I really do believe the theories about her being the next keeper of the magic, because she is truly out here representing her whole family and being super proud of every single one of them for exactly who they are, accepting them for exactly who they are. And that, if that is not the golden quality in the keeper of the magic, I don't know what is. But as you'll notice, it feels like Abuela doesn't fully know that through this movie. Not intentionally, but we'll talk about that later. Let's go on. So it was really interesting to me that Abuela was surprised when Antonio asked for Mirabel's support in walking to his door. And I mean, you can just see by the look on her face when she sees Mirabel come out with Antonio. And that just says a lot to me about how sort of blind Abuela really is to what's truly going on in her family. Even though, to someone looking in on the outside, like us, the audience, and even Mirabel, especially when she comes to that realization towards the end of the movie, it's a blind spot for her. What's very clear for us to see, what becomes very clear for Mirabel to see, it's a very huge blind spot for Abuela. And I think that that's why she was surprised when Antonio very much needed Mirabel's support and nobody else's. I also think it's really interesting that when the kids touch the candle to then touch the door, there's something that they need to say, right? A sort of prayer, sort of commitment, a sort of vow, I think, more so. And part of that vow is, may this ability put strength in our home. Again, this emphasis on ability, right? Like, not may this person, may this love, may this life, but rather may this ability put strength in our home. So from the very beginning, we can see that if we're really paying attention, we can see how this gift has sort of become a little skewed, right? We've become overvaluing it. And this is very apparent in the way that Mirabelle is essentially not seen as helpful or even able to help to the degree that others can in the family, because she wasn't granted with one of these gifts. The Antonio's gift is super cool. I totally called it the second she was like, you're an animal guy. I was like, oh, his gift is going to be talking to animals. Watch. I watched. It was awesome. The whole thing with the tiger, that was just badass and awesome. Goodness, excuse me. And that was just super awesome. Yeah, there's no other word for that. It was beautiful. This movie had so many moments where I was just tearing up, just in awe of what I was watching. It's really, really, really sad to me that no one notices that Mirabelle isn't in the picture. In that picture that they take in the beginning, that kicks off Waiting on a Miracle. Waiting for a Miracle? I think Waiting for a Miracle. Or, I don't know. One or the other. I'm sorry. But what I thought was a really interesting addition is that one of the background people behind Mirabelle, right as they're zooming in on her for the beginning of that song, they are looking at the family and then they look at her, which I thought was a really nice touch. Damn, Disney, even paying attention to your background actors, quote, quote, in an animated movie. Go you. I love that Mirabelle's I Want song, which is Waiting on a Miracle, Waiting for a Miracle. Wait, I think it's Waiting on a Miracle. Yes. Her I Want song predicts what's about to come. I love that. I love that this happens sometimes. The only other time I can think of that this happens is in Frozen. It's not the I Want song, but Frozen 1 and 2 actually, but rather the beginning songs. So in Frozen, it was Frozen Heart, the song they sing while they're mining the ice, and then All Is Found in Frozen 2 lets you know about Holland and kind of what's to come. And so I like that this did this as well, right? She goes, she starts going how she can't move the mountain, she can't make the flowers bloom, she can't heal what's broken, she can't control the morning rain or a hurricane. Also, Lin-Manuel Miranda, I just want to applaud you for how many times you're able to squeeze the word hurricane in there. Just not even this particular song, but in general. Like in We Don't Talk About Bruno, the word hurricane is also in there. Like, man, what an ode to Hamilton's Hurricane. I noticed. So, right, so she says all that, but then in the next verse, she says, you know, I would move the mountains. I would make new trees and flowers grow. Emphasis on new trees and flowers grow. I would, what does she say? I would heal what's broken. I would show this family something new, right? And she sets out to do all of those things. She moves the mountains by finally bringing the cracks in the family to the surface and creating the literal crack in the mountain that surrounds Encanto. Obviously, she helps to heal what's broken by helping heal her family. she helps make new trees and flowers grow when she helps Isabella see herself in a brighter, bigger light. And it goes on. It's really, really awesome. You know, she says she says she'd show this family something new, which she definitely has and does as the movie goes on. I thought that this was something really interesting, and I don't know if this was intentional on the writing. It probably was, but I love that her name is Mirabel, and just think about how close that is to miracle. Mirabel. Miracle. It's literally a syllable away from miracle, which just foretells to us that she is the miracle. She doesn't have to wait on a miracle. She is the miracle, truly and deeply. Next, I just wrote, Abuela is so dismissive. She is, though, and I diss on Abuela a lot in these notes, but at the end of the day, like, we'll get there, but she's hurting. You know, she's in a place that's not fun to be either. Next, let's talk about Julieta. So her mom shows her empathy, but unfortunately still invalidates her by saying that she's, you know, she could lose her way, like Bruno lost his way, and by saying that, you know, maybe you should just go to bed, you'll feel better in the morning, kind of sending signals that she doesn't really believe that Mirabel is seeing these things, but that she believes that Mirabel believes she's seeing these things, but not necessarily that she really is. And, of course, your innate knowing is going to know when someone is showing you empathy but doesn't quite believe you. And there are a lot of sad aspects of this movie, and that's one of them for me. So the crazy thing, though, is that in secret, Abuela believes the cracks are real, right, and are happening. And we find that out when Mirabel is eavesdropping on Abuela when she makes that prayer to Pedro, to the candle. And so not only is Abuela dismissing Mirabel, but she's dismissing her while also knowing that she's right, which just, again, makes me think Mirabel is the only one who's seeing the cracks. If Abuela believes that the cracks are there to the degree that she obviously does, maybe she sees them too. Again, just fortifying that theory that Mirabel is the next keeper of the magic. So I love how Casita kind of reminds me of the ocean in Moana. They sort of have like a similar personality, and I thought that was really cute. Next, we come to the part where Mirabel, she's hell-bent on saving the miracle. And so the next day, right after the ceremony and everything, she goes to Dolores to ask her if she's heard anything about the cracks and everything. Dolores then goes and says that she hears the rats talking in the walls, and Louise says, I could be heard twitching all night. And so I thought that was really funny. And so our next stop, of course, is going to be Luisa. Another little thing that I noted down is when Abuela goes to sit at the breakfast table, or I don't know if it's breakfast or lunch, don't know. She goes to sit, and there are some animals in her chair, and it's Antonio, and he's like, oh, I asked them to keep it warm for you. And Abuela says a really interesting thing. She goes, oh, I'm sure today we'll find a great use for your gift. Sort of insinuating that, like, these gifts can only work if they fit neatly into the family and into the family's role in the village. which definitely gets fortified later in Bruno saying how his gifts just weren't helping the family. And ultimately they weren't going to help Mirabel, who was going to be seen as a future villain at 5 years old when he had that prophecy that showed her in it, right? With the sort of like holographic prophecy with the house intact and then not in her in the front. So that's a little bit of a nod very early on to that sort of sense of control around these gifts and therefore this family and how this family must play their role. Issa's reaction to the arranged marriage announcement at the breakfast, we're just gonna call it the brunch table. At the brunch table. I'm just kidding. I don't know if people in Colombia celebrate brunch. I just genuinely don't know if it's lunch or breakfast that they're having at the table, right? Was a very painful reaction. If you actually watch her face, when Dolores says that Mariano wants to get married today or to get engaged today and he wants 5 kids, not only, of course, does she literally sprout and not in like a, oh my God, I'm so excited way. No, like a, oh, this is, ooh. And it's so interesting because, again, this movie, like, going over my head. Normally, if I was, like, going to an adult movie, like a marketed to the demographic of, 20-somethings and up, I would come with that sort of, like, extra perceptive shade right over my eyes right away. But because I was not expecting the depth of this movie, I thought, like, oh, 5 kids, that's a lot. And just completely went over my head. The fact that it's very clear that is not that's a lot of kids, but I'm excited. That's a lot of kids. Period. Reaction from Isabela. And again, Abuela does not notice. All that matters is that they get married. I said advantageous for the family. It's advantageous for the village. And, each new generation has to keep the miracle burning. And that's what it means to Abuela. So something I wrote here, right, is this quote of, we mustn't take the miracle for granted. However, family members are being actively taken for granted. So I think, again, super interesting. We're now moving on into Luisa's song, Surface Pressure. And what a bop, man. What a great song. Really captures the struggle that Luisa's going through, really captures the juxtaposition of the tough facade that she puts outside and the pressure that she feels she's crumbling under on the inside. The Titanic reference was really awesome. The ship doesn't swerve as it heard how big the iceberg is. I thought that was really cool. Just all of the comparisons and analogies were really great. Did Hercules ever say that he didn't want to fight Cerberus? Like, that was just, all of it was really intelligent. It really, again, like, musicals used to a brilliant degree where, sure, obviously, actually, the song did move the plot along in the way of, this is Luisa telling Mirabel how she feels and what's going on, and for the sake of, our entertainment, and to showcase the intense amount of emotion, we get this in song form. And so it ends up being just a really entertaining number that really, really gives us an insight into Luisa, and it's just really, really smartly written. And I love how Luisa mentions that taking time to relax is a course correction for her. So not only is Mirabel sort of inspiring this opening up, by the people that need to do it the most, being her 2 sisters, and even Bruno, she's also inspiring them towards solutions for themselves. let's see, the dancing was a little off-putting at first, but I do appreciate it because it's really cool to see like a very brawny, very, feminine in the way that like, yes, she's obviously comfortable in the dress that she's wearing, which is very similar to the dress that the other girls are wearing, with Isabella being kind of more of a different vibe because, she's got that whole quote perfect favorite grandchild thing happening. But it's like clearly Luisa is very tomboyish, and to see this tomboy slay this very feminine choreography with some dancing donkeys around her, it was pretty awesome. The way that they incorporated the donkeys into that number was just freaking genius, because again, it's like it's making use of everything that already was happening before the song happened. The donkeys were already there, right? They were already talking about this thing. And now the donkeys just become part of the crazy imaginative way that Luisa is imagining telling Mirabel about her struggles. And it's freaking awesome. I just said, Abuela's fucking blind, yo. Walking with Isabella, she can't even see how she's not happy. And you can. It's so interesting, right? Like, as I think it's somewhere, I don't know, somewhere in between Surface Pressure and the next number, I believe, like you see Abuela and Isabella walking together, and I mean, Isabella's face, man, if you watch Isabella, this whole movie, her face, as hard as she tries, betrays her, which awesome on the artists who created this. That's awesome. Good job. I'm all for it. I love. We're moving on to right after Mirabel talks to Luisa, and Luisa says, find Bruno's vision, and if you find the vision, you'll find the thing you're looking for, right? So I love Mirabel's self-celebration upon making it across the chasm in Bruno's tower, right? Because like she has to go up all those stairs, and man, that scene is so funny, between her being like, oh my god, Bruno, you're in the worst, and like getting there being like, oh crap, are you freaking kidding me? Like now I have to cross this like dangerous chasm, like Jesus. No. Wow, there's a really loud child right outside in the hallway. Honestly though, love Mirabel's self-talk. I love her self-celebration. I love the fact that she is the, like, it's interesting because you could actually argue that she needs to celebrate herself more, and by the end of the movie she comes to see that. But in these moments where it matters, where she's the only one who's like got her own back, she has got her own back, and that's freaking awesome. What a role model. I thought that was really clever, that the closer Mirabel comes to finding what's wrong, the more the house starts to freak out and break, because essentially the generational trauma is getting closer to the surface, and like the fractures that started with Abuela's fear are starting to become known and to become more visible, not only to Abuela and to Mirabel, but to the general house, to the people in the house, right? And this can also be depicted by the fact that Bruno's cave starts to crumble the closer Mirabel gets to putting the vision together, and then as she starts to gather all of the different pieces of the vision, the tower just comes to a point where it crumbles in general. I think it's really interesting. Again, Abuela is just very unintentionally blinded by her trauma and the way that she's dealt with it. It's so interesting. I'm talking about generational trauma. I'm talking about families, and there's literally a family in the hallway making so much noise. I feel like the parent is trying to calm the child down. The child is like, nah. It's like Mirabel. Mirabel's like, no, I will find out what's wrong with the magic. I will find out about the cracks. I don't give a crap what happens. I will do this. Man, that girl, she's got some agency. So, Abuela blames Mirabel for Luisa's power failing, as if she literally has any control. Like, that's really interesting. Again, Abuela blinded by fear, blinded by her trauma, her holding on too tight, right, to this miracle that she thinks is this magical candle, when in truth the miracle is her family. Spoiler alert, the miracle is her family. It's the fact that they get to be a family, the fact that they get to live and create a more family, right, a bigger family. That's the miracle, and she loses sight of that, and it becomes so apparent in the way that she, sort of uses this excuse of Mirabel not having gotten this gift to blame her for the things that are going wrong, to blame her for breaking the family, so to speak, for breaking the house, breaking their home. This is a little production side note, and I really appreciate how they got a very Colombian ensemble to play this. Not only, I believe, a lot of the cast is Colombian, but the people who played the instruments, the people who sang a few of the songs that weren't sung by the voice actors, also Colombian. Just really awesome for the fact that they are creating this movie as a love letter to Colombia, and it's being created by people from Colombia, by people that, the only people really that can truly convey this love in the deepest way possible. And I thought that was great. So, Mirabel's first question when we start to talk about Bruno and his visions, right? Because Peppa gets a cloud because she hears the cursed name Bruno. And Mirabel's first question when we start to encounter Bruno and why he got ostracized and all this stuff is, what if you just didn't understand what his vision was? What if you just didn't get what he was seeing? And people just dismiss that so quick, right? Peppa literally blames Bruno for putting the word rain in her head. As if, like, she couldn't attempt to calm down. Like, on her own for her wedding day. Like, it's just really... This whole song is just really interesting to me because the things that people blame Bruno for, I'm just like, homie, you got... Like, people did you dirty. Because, one, have you seen Peppa? It takes, like, nothing for that woman to start reigning over herself. Like, literally nothing. So, like, poor Bruno is just, like, awkward Bruno trying to say something nice, says the word rain, and now all of a sudden to Peppa, it's gonna rain! Oh my god, can you imagine? I can. It totally... Wow. But, Peppa, queen of blowing things out of proportion. Love me some Peppa. I love how Dolores says that she can hear him, present tense. And later in that song, she says she still hears him. You just gotta listen closely because that's when everybody's singing over each other. I also love Dolores's verse, and we don't talk about Bruno because she mentions how his gift was more of a heavy lift. I believe the lyric is, I actually learned it because I was gonna karaoke it the other night and I didn't get a chance. I think it goes, she goes to Mirabel and goes, hey, grew to live in fear of Bruno stuttering and stumbling. I can always hear him sort of muttering and mumbling. I associate him with the sound of falling sand. It's a heavy lift with a gift so humbling. Always left Abuela and the family fumbling, grappling with prophecies they couldn't understand. And then she asks Mirabel, do you understand? And Mirabel doesn't quite yet. She will. But I just love Dolores's part in this song because she's the only one who's actually looking at Bruno with an objective perspective, right? She's not seeing him as this evil person. She's not seeing him as this guy whose gift is to make bad shit happen. She's literally aware of the fact that he was just handing out prophecies and the family didn't know what to do with them. And therefore, he turned out to be as misunderstood as his prophecies. And in fact, I would wager that it's Dolores who's feeding him those arepas. Yep, I think it's her. So, it sounds like Bruno just predicted. Let's see, what did I write here? I feel like sometimes my things are like chicken scratch because I'm trying to write and watch at the same time. Oh my goodness. No, I'm talking about, so everything except for the dead fish in that song that Bruno predicted, literally, like, or I should say, not everything except for the dead fish. There are things aside from the dead fish and, you know, the guy going bald, that honestly, like, could have been avoided in that song. One being like the guy who grew a gut. It's like, homie, you know that if you eat arepas all the time, you gonna get fat eventually. You know, like, I don't personally believe that the human body's metabolism is meant to slow down to the degree that it does nowadays. But I also don't believe that we need to be eating all of the crazy stuff that we call food nowadays. Like, I really believe that if you feed your body properly, you're not just gonna one day become old and get fat, or, you know, hit a mark in your development where you're just gonna rapidly, or you're not rapidly, but just decline in general. I really believe we're meant to plateau. But we gotta do the right things and feed each other properly. And I know that's a huge struggle. I get it, especially when they're yummy arepas con queso. I'm sorry, I mixed up my Portuguese and my Spanish. But really, I just think it's really funny. The song in and of itself is just great. Also, Issa's part in Bruno's song. When you first watch the movie, you know, and everyone's like, and I love too how her part comes right after that lyric, your fate is sealed when your prophecy is read. And then all of a sudden you just get Isabella. He told me that the life of my dreams would be promised and someday be mine. And you're just like, of course. Of course. That's the prophecy this bitch got. She would. Out of everybody. What did her freaking prophecy thing even look like, huh? Was it her with a cactus? I don't know. Actually, I'm very curious. I think about that. But at first you see it as this like, okay, whatever, sure, Isabella. We get why Mirabel is like, ugh. Because of course, Mirabel being quite literally the opposite of perfect, the giftless child, the not special, right? As that guy says in the beginning of the movie. To just sort of have your sister be Abuela's favorite. And this is very clear by when you look at the family photos, when Abuela is standing next to each kid as they got their door. Isabella is the only one where Abuela isn't like completely composed, both hands on the candle, like she's smiling. I think she's even putting her hand on Isabella's shoulder. Like, it's very apparent. And it doesn't surprise me. I think Isabella is her oldest grandchild. She's also the one that looks the most like Abuela. So it wouldn't be surprising to me if Abuela just really saw a lot of herself in Isabella and was hoping to give her the sort of life that got ripped away from her. Doesn't mean it's the life Isabella wants, but when you really think about that, and when you think about the situation that's actually true for Isabella, which is that she's actually hurting from this need to be perfect, from this place she's been sort of put into by Abuela. and her part of the song becomes more like a wish and more like something that I think she's holding on to, almost kind of blindly, because it's not like she's singing that part with any sort of hesitation or anything. It's very much, nope, this is what Bruno said. I'm committed to it. Yep, he told me the life of my dreams is promised. I'm here. But then later in that song, if you listen, excuse me, if you listen to the part where everybody's overlapping each other, Isabella goes, so she sings with Abuela, time for dinner, and then she directly goes into, again, he told me that the life of my dreams would be promised and someday be mine. He told me that my power would grow like the grapes that thrive on the vine. And right after that, she goes, I'm fine. And then next, again, she repeats the first part of her verse, until would be promised and someday be mine. And then the next line is, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. We don't talk about Bruno. So clearly, she's kind of shaken even in that belief of like, okay, well, this is what he told me, but this is not about to be the life of my dreams. Like, I don't want to marry this guy and have 5 kids with him. Like, so it actually becomes kind of sad. And I thought that was a really interesting observation that I made upon watching it the second or third time. Also though, and we don't know this until later because, we find out what the life of her dreams and what her power growing really means to Isabella. We don't know this until later, but when we do, if you really think about it, if Isa doesn't get her prophecy, then, let's see, hold on. If Isa gets, or I should say, if Isabella does get her prophecy fulfilled, she gets to live the life of her dreams, she gets to have her power grow, then Dolores' prophecy doesn't come true. Although, if we're being really technical, Dolores' prophecy never said that the man of her dreams would be just out of reach forever. Prophecy didn't even say that he would be married to someone else. He said he'd be betrothed to another. So there's not a follow through just yet, right? Like, I know in arranged marriage, more often than not, they are followed through. But if we're being technical, but if we're not, like, think about it. If Isabella gets the life of her dreams, then Dolores' prophecy doesn't come true. So this is really interesting to me because, again, right, Bruno is this character that's built up to be a villain, that's built up to be someone that we are not supposed to like, that's supposed to put our protagonists in bad situations, right? And Disney even uses green to identify him, which is a very villainous color in their palette more often than not. And yes, I know Tiana has a lot of green because, Princess and the Frog. I said more often than not. But even the voodoo, even the voodoo guy, he has a lot of green going for him. But there is this sort of like villainous green that they made essentially the color of Bruno's glowing eyes when he's having a vision and the color of the visions themselves. It's like this sort of like Slytherin bright green. And they completely subverted expectations with Bruno, right? Like, he turns out to be this just OCD, traumatized, awkward, introverted guy who just had a gift that they didn't know what to do with, right? Always left Abuela and the family fumbling, grappling with prophecies they couldn't understand. And the song turns out to be the same, where, like, if you really break it down, a lot of those prophecies didn't have to come true. A lot of them were honestly served more as warnings. All, of course, aside from Isabella's, maybe, because hers is kind of just like more passive, I guess. Like, if someone is told, I don't know, again, I've tried to record this video a couple times now and it's hard for me to keep straight what I said in the last attempt and what I'm saying now. But basically, Bruno's gift, if it depicted, if people got prophecies like, oh, your life is going to turn out awesome all the time, then how would they know for what to prepare? Like, wouldn't you rather someone that predicts the future let you know that you need to be prepared for something? Because inevitably there will come a point in life when things won't be super peachy. You know, it may not be on the scale of a natural disaster, but like just on the scale of this family though, like there are clear fractures in the foundation of this family. And wouldn't you rather be sort of like forewarned so that you can work on these cracks before they get out of hand? And so I feel like that's kind of like when they're so used to everybody's gifts sort of only having this positive effect. And you know, Peppa kind of gets the short end of the stick too, because Abuela's consistently being like, Peppa, you have a cloud, and like not really considering her daughter's feelings or that she might be feeling negative things, which is probably why she has a cloud. It's just very like, it becomes very void of emotion. And like, what can your gift do for the family and for the community? And if your gift isn't helping the community and the family, you kind of end up just feeling useless and like you're not helping the community or the family. Yeah. So that's all very interesting. We already said Dolores says she can still hear him in the walls. And she does say that during that song. Mirabel's dad's in major denial. This is all I said. Oh, yeah. Because, like, I love how he's like, nobody will know. It's like, we just got drilled into our heads that Dolores can hear things from, like, miles away. And you think she's not going to hear you talking about this vision? How did nobody learn sign language just to be able to keep shit from Dolores? Like, I would want my secrets. Much like this vision. Also, that was a really funny moment when she's like, I know. Dolores's buttons are the cutest. Button, not literal clothing article or item. Button is like when you sort of punctuate the scene with something at the end. So every time Dolores says a line and then goes, or like something like that, that's a button. I love her buttons. They're very cute. Okay. So Abuela never validates or addresses Peppa's feelings. I just mentioned that. She just sort of tells her she has a cloud and expects her to put herself back together without the empathy of her own mother. I don't know. Obviously, Peppa's a grown woman, but she's a grown woman with big feelings, and her gift reflects that. And she obviously struggles with those big feelings, and it's really endearing to see Felix, you know, and even Camilo seek to help her calm down and things like that. But it again, very sad. Abuela, her own mother, does not come to her aid that way. She just points out her cloud and sort of goes on along her day. I love how Antonio's animal friends put the vision together. Next, I said in all caps, fuck, you're an effing denial, Abuela. Shut the fuck up and listen to your family. I was really upset. Obviously, yeah. I feel like obviously this is the part from the dinner. And I mean, really though, like Abuela just looks for every excuse not to see the fact that her expectations for this family and her overemphasis on the magical abilities it's dampening stuff. That's what's sort of like snuffing the candle out. I thought it was interesting that Bruno talks to the rats, which is kind of an ode to Antonio's, quote, useless, quote, gift. Like, I definitely feel like Antonio probably would end up like Bruno. If Bruno, like, if Antonio had been the first Bruno, I feel like he would end up like Bruno. maybe not necessarily the same, but like it's just not an easy thing to find a super practical use for Antonio's gift. I'm not saying that there isn't one. I'm sure that, you know, if he can get a bunch of birds to like help hang up a big sign on something really tall, like I'm sure that's helpful. I'm sure there are ways for sure, but just like Bruno's, all I'm saying is that it would take some creative thinking, and, you know, positive and accepting attitudes to sort of come up with the best ways to use Antonio's gifts on the daily, right? It's not as straightforward as Peppa being able to make it rain when they need rain for their crops, or sun when whatever, or Julieta. I mean, even Peppa's gift is kind of not super straightforward because it's all affected by her mood, right? But Julieta, it's like, you know, it's very straightforward. You feed them something, they're healed. Isabella, very straightforward. Lisa, very straightforward. Whereas, like, you know, Antonio's gift is kind of like on the daily, they kind of have to figure out how to use it. And that sort of is like Bruno's, and they were obviously not great at doing that. So the parallel between Bruno and Antonio is pretty cool. Bruno's fall was just really, really, really silly. Like when he falls into the fog and it turns out that it's not like a deep fall, it's literally like a fall very close right there. So I said Bruno's fall subverted expectations of danger, and then maybe symbolizing how the crack began small, right? Like that fall that he took, it was a very small fall. So, in fact, Bruno's gift brought to help course correct before no gift. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry, this is like me trying to write in code for myself. So, what I'm trying to say here is that before the whole no gift thing happened, which was obviously very alarming for the whole family, Bruno's gift was bestowed. And obviously bestowed a long time prior, right? Because in between Mirabel and Bruno, we've had Luisa and Isabella and Dolores and Camilo. But essentially, Bruno's gift, the theory about Mirabel being the next champion for the magic sort of shakes this up a little bit for me, because I feel like the champion or the keeper of the magic is probably never going to have a gift like that. But I would imagine that if the fact that Mirabel did not get a gift has less to do with her being next keeper and way more to do with like sort of jarring the family into seeing the cracks and the issues, I would imagine that Bruno's gift was there to sort of help them see that before that fateful gift ceremony were to ever come true. I loved how they obviously portrayed Bruno with a sort of OCD that's unspoken but very real in the way that he compulsively knocks and has these very sort of compulsive actions that he feels protect him in some way, shape, or form as he's going about the house, the insides of the house, I should say. Obviously, this is likely due to the trauma that came from being ostracized, and then just the generational trauma, the burdens that, you know, Abuela carries and unfortunately bestowed onto her family unintentionally. Also, obviously, his mental state could be a part of the fact that he's isolated and he's, for a long time, been sort of single-handedly holding Casita up from the inside, right, by patching the cracks and things like that. And I thought that his different personalities were great. Another interesting mental health thing that was slightly represented, though not heavily talked about, but I do appreciate the way that they kind of brought mental health into it without really bringing mental health into it by the way that they portrayed Bruno. I really appreciate that. I wrote something about, does Dolores give him food? I think she does. Bruno obviously feels deeply traumatized by being the only one whose gift, quote, wasn't helping the family, quote. So he's just sacrificed so much, and he even sacrificed his own happiness for theirs by leaving, even though he really does crave and covet his seat at the table, the seat he had at the table. You know, he even draws his own plate, which was so sad and so endearing. And not only that, but he sacrifices his own happiness also for Mirabel, because in leaving, then he doesn't have to come clean about that prophecy, that vision that's bound to scare everybody, and not just scare everybody, but make everybody scared of this girl who's 5 at the time, right? And it's really unfortunate that he felt so defeated and just so useless by this point that he didn't even try to explain the vision. He'd already lost hope in his own value and his gift, because that's kind of what his family was reflecting back to him, that his gift just was a hopeless one and just wasn't of value. It wasn't helpful. And he believed that, and in his believing that, he didn't stand up for the truth. He didn't stay and talk about the vision, you know, and it leads us to the not blaming Bruno or anything, obviously, but I'm just saying that, like, and who's to say that even if he had stayed and explained, it would have done anything different. Regardless, we get to the point in the plot where we are, where it's up to Mirabel, right? So Antonio's gift happened to help Bruno come back and Mirabel fulfill her potential. The rats told me everything moment. So I love that, again, Antonio being this little champion for our champion, Mirabel. He gets a whiff of everything from the rats, right? The situation happening. And when Mirabel is telling Bruno that she needs him to have another vision, and he's like, well, I need a big open space, Antonio's right there at the door being like, yo, rats told me everything. You can use my room. Let's save the miracle. And I love that. That was awesome. Again, though, parallels between Bruno and Antonio, right? These sort of like divergent thinkers, in the sense that, like, you know, both with just kind of like just perplexing gifts. What do you do with those two gifts? Even Peppa's sort of sporadic, crazy, mood-affected gift has a purpose, a very linear purpose. Their gifts don't, and I love that. I love the parallels between them. So Abuela can't see how every time her neglect or putting pressure on the family gets mentioned, the cracking grows worse. Again, Abuela, being blinded by fear and trauma, cannot see this. Instead, she's very quick to blame Mirabel, all on the basis that this girl didn't get a gift. Like, that's the only basis, right? Other than that, what is Mirabel doing but just trying to warn the family about something that they all should be forewarned about? I love the family weirdos get a bad rep line. That's really awesome, and it's just great to see, you know, the black sheep in the family finally really truly getting a representation in our mainstream kids media, because there are a lot of kids out there who feel like black sheep. There are a lot of kids out there who feel like they don't fit in, and how they get a bad rep, you know, because they're quote quote weirdos in their family. And I thought that was very sweet. I love this clarification that Bruno's visions are given for a reason, but it's not always clear what the reason is. Again, like Antonio, it's kind of like this gift that you're kind of having to guess what to do with every day. The butterfly in the vision goes to where the miracle began, the river. Right? We end up back at the river in the time of healing and resolution. So Mirabel is told she has to see she's what the family needs, and Bruno tells her this. And I just thought, if only Bruno had been told the same, right? Because he does end up being what the family needs. It's not for his vision. Our heroine does not save the miracle. We don't get to the place where we get to. And so I love that. I love how he's the one telling her that. And at the same time, it's so, so true for him as well. I find it really interesting, right? After she sees Bruno and she gets the vision and goes off to see Isabella, I find it really interesting that Isabella is saying that everything was perfect because Abuela and the family were happy. She does not mention herself in that sentence. And I love how Mirabel calling her selfish is what sets Isabella off. And Mirabel immediately offers her empathy after Isabella confesses that she does not want to marry Mariano. Also, just little note, her room is probably my favorite part of the whole house. The only thing I would add in there is a pool. Yeah. So let's see. Mirabel thinks it's just about hugging, not why they're hugging. I think that's really interesting. So obviously, if you can't tell, we're into What Can I Do right now, which is it's Isabella's big song. And it's all about how, she just made a cactus for the first time. And she says how it's not symmetrical, how it's not perfect, but it's her. And what else can she do, right? The prophecy is coming true. Her powers are growing, just like Bruno said. And Mirabel, as Isabella is beginning her song, just sort of musing about what else can I do? What is this? Mirabel is trying to get her into this fated hug, right? This prophesized hug. Not understanding that it's not about the hug. Not about the hug. It's about the connection that the hug will represent. And as we go through this song where Isa is just saying that she just wants to be as opposed to be perfect. And I love the line, I'm so sick of pretty, I want something true, don't you? And how she muses, how far do these roots go down? And it's in that moment when Isa goes, I'm so sick of pretty, I want something true, don't you? That Mirabel sees for the first time her sister. First she had the context of, she doesn't want to marry this guy, she's doing it for the family. Oh, interesting. But how deep the facade goes is not made certain until this moment, and Mirabel realizes, this is not what you want? This life, this whole thing is not what you want? This isn't true for you? And it's in that moment where for the first time she joins the song truly in earnest, not just being like, oh my God, do you know where you're going? Or oh, okay, I guess you're growing new things. This is fine. This is the first time where in true, pure, genuine sincerity, Mirabel just looks at her sister and sings to her, says, to me, it just seems that your life's been perfect from the moment you opened your eyes. And I love this line. She goes, all I know are the blossoms you've grown, but it's awesome to see how you rise. And it's in this moment that Isa feels completely seen. Completely seen. Because Mirabel is honoring, all I know are your blossoms, right? Your beautiful flowers. She's acknowledging what Isa is, but she's also acknowledging her potential and what she could be. That imperfect, but incredibly true, bright thing. And just boom, connection. And I just put here, awesome, Mirabel. That is her gift, right? Seeing what needs to be seen, saying it out loud, and that has an impact. And next, together they sing, and Mirabel encourages Isa towards her course correction, right? For Luisa, it was relaxation, taking a break, knowing that you don't have to do it all by yourself. For Isabella, it's embracing the new, the imperfect, the uncertain. And as Isabella, I love that. It goes from Isabella singing, what else can I do? A hurricane of jacarangas, right? And next, it's them together. What else? Like, it's awesome to see how you rise. What else can you do? A hurricane of jacarangas. And it's now both of them singing it together. And in between is, Isabella singing, Mirabel is going, go, grow. What else can you do? What else? What else? What else? And it's just, that song is so, I think that one and Dos Ruquitas are probably like hand in hand for me when it comes to just how much emotion courses through me, because I don't know that people fully understand the power of being seen by the people you love and that love you. I don't know if people truly understand the power of being seen by your family. But in that song, we see that. And it's really interesting that Abuela is set off by Mirabel and Isabella just having fun. That's all they're doing. They're just having fun. Of course, Isabella's like growing a bunch of shit that she's never grown before and probably changing up the town a little bit, but at the end of the day, like, they're just having fun. And that just shows you like how deeply in her trauma and in her pain Abuela Alma is, because she sees her two granddaughters that never getting along for probably the first time in forever. And her first reaction is like, what the heck is going on? Y'all gotta stop. Like, what? And then I just said that no head of household is responsibly leading a family when they can't support connection overall. All Abuela seems to care about is how useful each member is and not how happy or connected they are, as evident in her display as the girls connect, which, if she's truly paying attention, they haven't, right? I just said this, like, it shows how clearly her attention is focused on things that should not be what are being focused on, and that is very evident by her display when she confronts Isabella and Mirabel. And it's interesting, too, because Mirabel actually leads with a very sure, we're saving the magic. This is what we're doing. And Abuela can't even see it. She does not even see it. She can't even make room for that. She can't even fathom that Mirabel is the one who could potentially actually help save this magic. And, from this point on, like, I just wrote, good for Mirabel for seeing that in the situation, Abuela really is the problem. The root of the problem, I should say. She's not the entire problem. Like, obviously, the rest of the family has been dismissive of Mirabel. The rest of the family has not been as supportive of her as they could be, aside from Antonio, basically. And even though we talked about it earlier, even her mom, like, she supports her and gives her empathy, but there's not a whole lot of belief in her. There isn't. It's kind of interesting. I don't know. It's like everybody follows Abuela's lead in sort of undercutting Mirabel, and it's good for Mirabel that she sees how no one will ever be good enough for Abuela. It's not a how much you do or what kind of effort you put in or how you want to do it or how you feel about it. It's just nobody will ever be good enough. And Abuela's very quick to assume that Mirabel and Bruno, or basically anyone who doesn't help in the way that she sees fit, that they don't care about the family. She says that Mirabel doesn't care about this family, and Mirabel is very quick to get up and be like, I love this family. I don't know what you're talking about. I love this family. Bruno loves this family. You're breaking this family, And once Mirabel starts to state the truth, that, Alma is the one killing the miracle, everything starts to burst open. and crack open. Much like a chrysalis, right? To come apart, to reunite. In order to fix the cracks in the family, the cracks in and of themselves must be acknowledged. It must be acknowledged that this is broken. Right? And Mirabel even says later, there's nothing that breaks that we can't fix together. Now, I love how Mirabel is the first one who starts running after the candle when everything starts to kind of go to shit and all gifts fail. Mirabel is there. She grabs the candle. Of course it goes out, but she got it. It's there. I thought it was really interesting that they put an emphasis on the fact that there are very large cracks that form behind Abuela's picture, and I think that it's because the way Alma has taken the miracle to be these abilities as opposed to the fact that this family gets to live as a family for granted just really breaks his heart. And I think that the cracks directly behind his painting and how his picture and how his picture falls is kind of one of the first things we see to fall. I think that's indicative of that his legacy really was for this family to just love each other and to be a family no matter what. And that is the miracle. And when that gets lost in everything, his heart breaks. So Casita uses the last bit of magic that it has to protect Mirabel, and that doesn't that just break you? Ooh. Through the broken mountain she goes. Until she comes home, the crack remains. So Mirabel walks through the broken mountain. I actually noticed that my third time watching. And I keep saying second and third because I genuinely don't know which time I noticed it, but it doesn't matter. She walks through the broken mountain. And now we find out why Abuela has never returned to this river. There was a mountain in between the valley they live in and this river. Obviously, for the sake of keeping invaders away, they fled their village because of the war. But it's really interesting to me that Mirabel's actions lead to this crack in the mountain that then allows her to go back to the river where it all started. And we get Mirabel's string getting paid off. Mirabel's string on one of Isa's new thorny plants, is what leads Abuela to find Mirabel at the river. So, either Isa and Mirabel hugging was gonna change Abuela. So the actual embrace and Abuela hopefully seeing how they are saving the miracle. Or all this would happen as it did anyway. And this little piece of string stuck on one of the thorny plants that Isabella grew with Mirabel's encouragement was going to lead Abuela to Mirabel in this very pivotal moment. So either way, Bruno's vision was right. But you can see how there's a couple of ways it could have been right. Right? Yeah. Very interesting. Love that. I love this idea of how things shift and even the future is it's never set in stone. And even the past has different versions of itself, as we're about to see. So Abuela's never returned to the river, and she's never really healed from this wound of losing her love. Mirabel coming to this river, Mirabel saying all of the things that she said back at the house, all of this together makes Alma face her past, makes Alma face her trauma, makes Alma face her fear of losing her home again, losing her family. Now, the first time I saw this movie, I didn't understand why we had to see the same story of the establishing of Encanto as we did in the beginning. And after watching it a couple more times, I realized we don't see the same story. You remember how I said that this first flashback at the very beginning of the movie is very muted. There's really not a lot of pain involved. It's just the wonder and the gratitude for the miracle. While this version, where Mirabel, it's brilliantly done, by the way. The song Dos Oruguitas starts to play, and it takes you on a journey, and it doesn't matter that, if you speak Spanish or not, if you understand the lyrics or not. The story of Alma and Pedro that they are portraying is a universal one, and it's absolutely it's a beautiful part of this movie, albeit very sad. So very sad. And that's the point. We had to see the fuller picture. We had to see the sadness. We had to see Abuela in the beginning. She sees the candle and she's surprised, but it's almost like she knows it's happening. Whereas like when we see this flashback again at the river with Mirabel and Abuela, it's not that at all. It's Abuela is just distraught. She is in shambles, and all of a sudden this magic sparks, and in her tears and her sobs, she's flabbergasted by this thing that happened, and even still this magical thing can't bring her Pedro back. And she spends 50 years mourning him. And Mirabel helps her face that. We had to see Abuela and Abuela, Alma, and Pedro's story in a new light. I said Los Oruguitas is perfect. Just look up the lyrics. Honestly, please look up the lyrics. I'm not going to look them up here because I'm just going to read through all of it and cry. But genuinely, like, look it up, or even just listen to the version in English. It's just absolutely beautiful and such a perfect song. And it kind of is indicative of this idea that Abuela never really left the cocoon, right? She never left this transitional phase in her life where she lost Pedro, and she was kind of living every day in the losing of him. And in living every day in this losing of someone you love, you forget to carry them forward with you. And Mirabel sees all this because she just has a natural gift for empathy and for attuning to people and for really truly seeing who people are. And she sees Abuela's trauma and fear. She learns to understand why she held on so tight. And most importantly, she forgives her. And Abuela, working through her trauma and validating Mirabel's experience, is just the best. And the fact that she says that she asked Pedro for a miracle, right? We saw this when Mirabel was eavesdropping on her earlier in the movie, when we find out that she's in on the fact the cracks are happening. And she says, I asked Pedro for a miracle and he sent me you. Just the biggest validation for Mirabel, and such a beautiful, beautiful moment in this movie. Like, Mirabel's empathy really comes through to who needs it most, and that is Abuela. And just like that, she begins to heal what's been broken. And once they embrace, oh man, like that song, it's just so, again, just musical theater being used to its finest. Like the build up to when they're hugging, and it goes, like it's a sort of like canon of voices, like oh, 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 and then you get this just sort of beautiful opening in the song, and it goes to ay mariposas no te aguante más. Like, it just absolutely enchanting, if you know what I mean. And this happens right as the butterfly takes flight, and you have this just Abuela and Mirabel in the middle of this gorgeous just tornado of yellow butterflies. It's breathtaking, and to just imagine to be one of them in that moment, like with all these amazing yellow butterflies just flying around you, just incredible. This is a little shout out to the Las Oruguitas, or the Dos Oruguitas lyrics. The fact that it goes, quote, "You are already miracles, breaking chrysalises. You must fly." I don't know why I couldn't read that word. "You must fly and find your own future." Just like, so well done. I like the lyrics in the English version for a translation better, obviously, because it actually goes with the song, but even just the lyrics or the translations that they give you when you're watching the film with closed captioning, just absolutely beautiful. That's where I got this one from. It's really sweet how Bruno comes to the defense of Mirabel. And like after Mirabel and Abuela have that moment in the river, and Bruno just instantly comes to her defense on the horse, being like, "It wasn't her fault, it was my fault." Just kind of goes to show that he's really gotten used to like kind of carrying all of the bad things in the family, a lot like Luisa, just in a different way. And Abuela's response is just the best, which basically just says that like he doesn't need to do that anymore. It's all good, you know. They're ready to accept his gift and him for who he is, but most of all him for who he is. I love that the Familia Madrigal song kind of returns in All of You a little bit, like everybody's sort of themes return in All of You, which I love that. That's again really, really smart musical theater writing. I loved Bruno's clarifying of how everything went down, especially with, you know, rather, I think it's just with Peppa. Yeah, he just clarifies with Peppa, like, "Yo, like it wasn't a prophecy, it wasn't about that. I saw you were nervous, and I just wanted to tell you that this guy loves you no matter what. It doesn't matter." And I love how he goes, you know, like, let it shine, let it rain, let it snow, let it go. The references in this movie to other Disney movies were so smart, and I love them so much. I love how the town and the community come to help in All of You. I mean, it's just really awesome because, as we know, the Madrigals have done a lot for this family or for this community. You know, they've made it a priority to give themselves to this community, to use their gifts for this community. And I love how the gift sings that we have no gifts, but we are many, and we will do anything for you. It's just like, it just shows that like that connection, it doesn't have to go, you know, just as far as your family. It can go so far beyond your family, and that is really, really beautiful. And you know, that can be really hard, I think, in the world that we live today, which is why I feel that when we find that community that really fits us and accepts us for who we are, that we hang on tight, you know, and we help them out when they need it. And that was really sweet, just how everything got tied in. I love to see Mirabel and her sisters learning to grow together, right? Like how they're saying how Luis is super strong. She goes, "Yeah, but sometimes I cry," and they go, "So do I." And them helping Isa plant all of her new creations, you know, that she can't grow on her own anymore, but they are still there. They can plant them. I love Dolores seizing her chance with Mariano. And I love her going like, "Slow down, son," when he's like, "Let's get married." She's like, "Okay, we gotta go through our first date, homie." Love that. I love how conscious Disney is getting about their weird trope to marry people off so fast. First with Merida, and then with, you know, Frozen, subverting the expectations with Hans and stuff, and now this is great. Just a direct, "Slow down, sir." Love that. I love the whole family singing and validating to Mirabel as she moves to add her very own, you know, doorknob with an M for Mirabel, but also an M for Madrigal. And I think the direct lyrics are, "We see how bright you burn," or we see how brave you've been. Now see yourself in turn. And then of course Bruno says, You're the real gift, kid. Let us in. And I just love that. I love that little part, because this whole time, what have we been waiting for? We've been waiting for Mirabel to see that she is not waiting on a miracle. She is the miracle. She is what this family needs. She is so special, and so much more special than she ever thought that she could be. And this is her family, like, validating that to her in the best way, but not only validating that, but also validating the fact that they weren't seeing that before, right? They're not seeing, like, they're not saying we've seen you this whole time. They say we see you now. We see how brave you've been, how hard it's been for you. And that is so healing and so awesome. And in waiting on a miracle, or waiting for a miracle, Mirabel asks Alma to open her eyes, right? And now it's Alma that says, open your eyes, abre los ojos, which coincidentally enough is how the movie starts. It starts with Abuela saying, abre los ojos, to 5-year-old Mirabel. So I love that the whole family is reflecting her. It's very reminiscent of how babies and kids learn through the mirroring of their family members, right? Like, once she's got this validation from her family, and then finally Abuela says, abre los ojos, what do you see? And she goes, I see me, all of me. And that's just, I love that once, she, like, I'm not saying that validating ourselves is not 100% necessary, and she does. If Mirabel did not validate herself, this whole story would not happen. It just would not happen, right? Mirabel validates herself in all the ways that she continues to go after the miracle. She continues to go after healing the family. She continues to do all of these things in spite of the antagonism that she is getting from Abuela to tell her to stop and all this stuff, even to the point where she comes to the conclusion of, this, we will never be enough for you. She comes to that because she has this brilliant gift of validating even herself. But that's not to say that, that's not enough to a degree, because obviously that's where it all starts. However, to be validated and honored by the people around you, that is very important as well. We are social species. We thrive in relationships that make us feel safe and loved and seen. And it's so beautiful to finally get this from her own family for her. Now, the closing up of the arcs is really fun. I love how Isa creates what she feels like and is celebrated for it. Luisa learns to relax and, of course, has help from the donkey friends in doing so. Super fun. Peppa forgets about trying to control her cloud, and she and Felix dance in hail. So fun. Bruno, of course, is welcomed back, which was just the best. I love how the rat is the one who takes the photo at the end, because they can't. Someone needs to be behind the camera taking the actual photo. And I have some final thoughts, and, we'll close her up, I guess. My final thoughts. So, I love that there are 2 full songs in Spanish. Colombia, Mi Encanto, and then Dos Oruguitas, of course. I think that it was, we haven't seen that done, I don't think. If it's ever been done, I've never really seen it, but I loved that. I loved that, especially because, like, we're already making this movie, in English primarily, but it is about a culture that speaks Spanish, and to have not only Spanglish, like, there's a bit of Spanglish in Familia Madrigal, and there's a bit of Spanglish in What Else Can I Do? And not only that, but we have a full song in Spanish, 2 full songs in Spanish, and I absolutely loved that touch. The generational trauma is depicted and done so well. I'm always so impressed with Disney's ability to do that, to put these really complex things into these really neat little boxes that kids can look into and understand. I mentioned this at the beginning, loved seeing the multi-generational household represented. That was awesome. Awesome use of the butterflies, right? Not just in honoring the cultural roots of the movie. Apparently the butterfly is like a really big thing in the style of story that inspired this movie, but also what's it called? But also in symbolizing transformation, right? In symbolizing the constant of change, but also symbolizing how one can adapt to it. I love the credit art. Like, the credit art was really cute. I love how Mirabel's door shows a butterfly. She was the change that Encanto needed, so that was really interesting. Also, I do firmly believe that golden butterfly that is on the candle and sort of seems to be a totem animal for Abuela is a representation of Pedro. If you want to think of him as reincarnated as a butterfly, or his essence is in the butterfly, Mirabel is also a butterfly in her own right, and I loved that. I love that Issa is wearing thorns all over in the credit art. She's got like thorny earrings, and she's got the toucan with the splattered beak right in front of her. She's made a friend in her splattering around all of her awesome plant pigments. Luisa is genuinely getting help from neighbors, all holding up Encanto together, which is sweet. I love that Lynn's and Jermaine Franco's names are on a record and an accordion. That was really sweet. The unicorn donkeys return for the credit art. Love that. I love that the capivara, I think is what it's called. The really funky animal that was in Bruno's vision, right? That like wouldn't move out of the circle, so he ended up being in the vision. He's like super nonchalant about everything, but then like when he's taking a bath, he's not nonchalant. I thought that was cute. I love Mirabel and Bruno with the rats sitting in the sand storm of his vision. That was a cute little credit art. I love that the heads of the story, Jason Hand and Nancy Cruz, their names are on a vision, which is pretty cool, fitting the fact that, heads of story. I love Peppa and Felix dancing and dancing happily in the rain. That was another cute little one. Julieta's kitchen was a fun one. I love the candle ceremony on the river with Abuela and Mirabel. Maybe that means honoring Pedro and past generations. Maybe the candles are for each miracle, i.e. person in the family. And I love that the light design credits are actually immersed in those candles on the river. I thought that was really sweet. And then the rat cinema comes back, which was really, really, really fun. Yeah, it was really fun. Honestly, that's the end of my notes. I really only have one characteristic criticism, and it's that I would have really loved to see Mirabel's own bedroom come to life. I imagine she has one now. I imagine the nursery probably has been turned into her bedroom. We also get a zoom into the house later, and we get to see that the doors are actually blank now. So these are just rooms that I'm guessing can be molded to whatever family member decides to live in that room. And so I would imagine Mirabel probably got a beautiful room that has a bit of every member of her family, much like her. Remember how we talked about the attention to detail, how even their outfits represent something about them? Well, if you look closely, Mirabel's skirt actually has a bit of everybody in her family, and I would imagine that her room would be much more of the same. Everybody in her family gets a little bit of a spotlight in Mirabel's room, but we didn't get to see that, although of course it's really, at first I couldn't fully grasp, the miracle that really was, which is Mirabel saved her family from being alienated from each other, saved her family from breaking apart in ways that would become much more difficult to heal as the years went on. And she, at the end of the day, ends up being the one to bring the miracle back to life. And as you notice, there is no more candle now. The family has learned through Abuela's deep, difficult lesson that the miracle had nothing to do with the candle. The miracle had nothing to do with these magical abilities. The miracle had everything to do with the fact that they could go on living. And these magical abilities were given to facilitate that, right? Like, help them create this home faster out of nowhere. Especially too, because like, can you imagine like if you have to travel through those mountains every time you need like resources? Gotta be a little bit rough. So I'm sure the gifts really helped, in that regard. But it was never about the gifts. It was always about the fact that the Familia Madrigal gets to be a family. And Mirabel showed everybody that, but also is the true embodiment of that. And as long as she lives, and as long as this lesson lives in the hearts of every family member, then this miracle will go on burning. It'll go on living. And I keep thinking of this part in the song, All of You. I've thought about it the whole time that I'm talking. And it's this idea, right? Because at the beginning we talked about how the family Madrigal is full of stars and everybody gets to shine. And at the end, in All of You, we get to this concept that stars don't shine, they burn. And constellations shift. And this idea, right, that this miracle, it's going to keep on shifting and getting passed down so long as the family is honoring each other and allowing for each other to shift and shifting in turn when it is needed. And I understand that lesson and the healing of the family Madrigal is so much bigger than her getting her own room. And this movie already was really fast paced in a great way. Like, it was paced perfectly, but felt like everything, it always felt like something was happening, which is what I mean kind of like by fast paced. I shouldn't say fast paced as much as it was very packed. It's already very packed, and the only way that I could conceivably see them showing us Mirabel's room, especially considering the fact that, like, everybody gets like an engraved door, and essentially her door is the most beautiful one of all because it's her standing directly in front of everybody in her family. And now, instead of different engraved individual doors, you've got the whole family Madrigal on this one beautiful united door, and Mirabel is at the front of it, with Antonio and Bruno, and it's almost like the family weirdos have been the one to be the change, and that is so much more special, I know, than us getting to see her room. And the only way we really could have seen her room, I feel, is like if we had put it in the credit drawings, but I just hope that because of how popular this movie is, Disney ends up making some sort of like animated series from it, and I will definitely catch it on Disney Plus if they do put it up there. I love Tangled, the series. Something along the same lines would be really, really fun to get to know this new era of the Madrigal family better. But yeah, those are my notes on Encanto. That's my deep dive into this movie. It's just such a well done movie. It's such a brilliant message. I love this sort of theme that Disney's been going down, this route of showing us just the deeper things and showing kids the deeper things and turning them on to these topics that are so big, but at the same time not impossible to talk about and so important. And my true hope is that families see this and can use it as a template to find where they have their own cracks, and not even just families like blood-related families, but groups of friends and people that coexist in general. I hope we can allow for the accepting of each other so that our love can be as constant as change. And if this movie didn't make me want to be a Disney princess more, I don't know what did. But that's my dream. My dream someday to be a part of something like this that hits deeply like this. Yeah. Let us be brave enough to be radically accepting in our love so that it can be as constant as change. Thank you, Encanto. Thank you, Disney. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, everybody who got involved with this project. Thank you, listener, viewer, for being here, for listening to my thoughts. Please share your thoughts, be it via a podcast review or a YouTube video comment, or just message me on Instagram. I will get back to you at some point, I promise. And I will catch you next time. Stay mystical, stay grounded. Chances are next episode is gonna be less of a commentary on things and more a personal life update situation. So I will catch you then, and yeah. Mwah.